be present in my marriage, and I wasn't handling it the best. And there was at times that I felt like I was drowning a bit. Hey, paintball was here before you were, and it'll be here long after you're gone if you choose. If you so choose, that's kind of the way he laid it out to her. Things got bad. I mean, they got, I would say, to the point of the brink of nearing separation, to be completely honest here. And
Photographer of the Year, let's hear it for Dan Shelley, Shellda Photos.
Courage in my veins, running uphill, a wildfire heart that never stays still. I was born with a spark my daddy couldn't kill.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Shellda Podcast, where today I've got a special one. I'm joined by former pro player and current head coach of San Antonio X Factor, and kind of like a neighbor. I don't think people realize how like you and I are close to each other, and I actually didn't realize that until recently too. But Ryan Brand, welcome to the show.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's crazy that we do live probably about 15 minutes away from each other.
Yeah, I think when people locally, when they ask me like where I live, I'm like, if you know where Outlaw Paintball is in Austin, I'm like literally 3 turns away from that. So I'm obviously very lucky to live that close to a paintball field. But it's crazy how many people show up to a field every Sunday and you just don't have any idea where people are. And like, Christian Dallas Smith of, in the Pits podcast, he just moved, and I think he's like a football throw away from me too.
Oh, wow.
It's wild, but thanks for being here. This is a really special episode. I think this is, I'm on 60, 65 episodes now, and just about every single one, I've had to reach out to guests and ask them, hey, would you be interested in coming on? What kind of story do you have? Obviously, I've got a pretty wealth of knowledge of the sport, and so I kind of know where I want to go with some of the stories. But it was interesting for this one because you actually reached out to me and said, hey, I want to jump on a call because I've got a story that I want to share. And so that was just like, it meant so much that you wanted to do that, one, first of all, and two, that you wanted to share your story, because we'll get into this. But I think what you're about to share and the questions that we have is going to resonate with so many people throughout paintball, because I think some of the topics that we're going to touch on, a lot of people actually go through and they just don't talk about it.
So, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, just kind of why I reached out to you just briefly. It's like, I'm a listener of the podcast, and I think maybe a couple months ago we connected, and you're like, hey, you're on my list, to do it, and kind of got me thinking a little bit. Like, what do I want to talk about? What story do I want to give? And I listen to all the podcasts I've done. I've been on Play the Game, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. Like, I've done quite a few podcasts, and I feel like it often gets very paintball centric, with me and my story, and kind of talking about paintball and coaching. And while I love all that, when I listen to podcasts, I like to gain perspective and learn from other people. And I really connect to the ones where people are able to get a little more vulnerable, and also able to even just you learn something. I want to learn from a podcast outside of paintball a little bit. And that's just what I enjoy. And even me and Archie, we're best friends, but sometimes I hear him go on a podcast, I hear him go play the game, I heard him go on your podcast, and I'm like, wow, I'm learning stuff from someone I see, weekly, just listening to it. And it's like, wow, and I just, I kind of smile at imagining what value that's giving to the masses, to other people. So it's kind of when I was thinking, like, man, what I've been dealing with, and I kind of like, I want to, bring, I have something that I think can be a help for others. And so I thought this would be a great platform to get it out there. So that's why I brought it to you. So that's when I reached out to you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's, it's so cool because what you're saying is exactly why I listen to podcasts too, right? Like, I love paintball. I think everyone that listens to this does love paintball, but you can only hear the same stuff over and over again, right? We can only tell the same paintball story over and over again. And so when you're hearing somebody that you've known for potentially years, maybe you've played with or against, to hear them share something or a different perspective, you just learn so much more about that person. And it's cool to hear that, you and Archie are obviously insanely close, but to hear him on other podcasts and you're picking up little pieces about him that you didn't know about, that's the gold in any type of show that any podcast host does. Hey, super quick before we go any deeper into this podcast, I've got to give a quick shout out to 2 show sponsors. First and foremost, as you see it, and as you've seen in a lot of my podcasts recently, I have been living in the Pro DNA playing hoodie. This is literally the most comfortable thing I own in my closet. And I have hoodies from Nike, from Lululemon, you name it. This is the one that I continue to go to. And the nice thing about this is every time I'm going to the field here locally in Austin, more recently at Texas Paintball, I'm seeing more and more of these popping up. Players are loving the Pro DNA playing hoodie for both on the field and just off the field streetwear. And then now for my second sponsor, we're now in the final countdown before the first NXL event of the season and the first USXBL event of the season. So there's no better time to head over to bfpgear.com and start loading up on some pods. That's one thing that everyone always shows up to the field, and there's at least one player on every team that says, hey, do you have extra pods? Hey, I'm missing my pods. So that's one thing you can always have in your gear bag that that your team's going to need. So head over to bfpgear.com, grab some pods, and load up your gear bag. All right. Thank you so much. And let's head back to the episode. It's a good one. But let's jump right into it. So like during the pre-show conversation that we had, you had mentioned over the last few years that you haven't really been as present at the field or even at events, at NXL events. And oftentimes you were bringing at-home life or work challenges or just outside noise to the events. And that caused a lot of distraction for you. Let's start there. Like, tell me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a lot easier to talk about now because spoiler alert, I'm on the other side of this now, and that's why I think I feel more comfortable speaking about it to everybody and hopefully offering some advice. But over me and my wife, we've been married for over 10 years now, and it's been paintball from the start. I think we started dating in 2013. The year we won the World Cup, and we were, like a lot of success, and she was there, and we were young, and she was just so supportive of paintball. And it was great for me because that's something I was really looking for, like a partner that really supported me and what I was doing. And just, over the years and the attrition, paintball just became, more and more and more and traveling more. And we started having children and, one kid into 2 and 2 to 3. And it was just, I could tell over the last few seasons, it was starting to wear, on her and kind of, I could feel that support, starting to kind of, pull away a little bit. And I didn't, at the time I was kind of like pretty upset about that. I didn't, this is my passion. This is so much of who I am. And I was kind of looking at it like, wow, like I'm no longer feeling the support from my partner and something I love. And it was just a lot of stress on me every time I was going out of town. And that is the sacrifice of being able to chase, live my dream. And doing this is having to be gone a lot and be gone from my family. And it just continued to, it was kind of unspoken for a while. And then it was voiced, a little bit of, hey, I'm really not enjoying this anymore. And me kind of like, well, I don't know what to tell you. It's like, this is who I am. This is what I do. And this is, also a form of employment for me. And she was very understanding of all those things. But at the same time, it's like, it just was really starting to cause a lot of friction in our relationship, in our marriage. And going into probably the last 2 seasons, it was kind of turning from lack of support to I really don't like this to kind of full on resentment, resentment for paintball, and then getting to the point of complete resentment, for our marriage. And I was taking that, into practices, into events, and me trying to just kind of scrambling, trying to figure out how to, figure this whole thing out. What was my decision to quit one thing I love or the other thing I love, and just really at a loss for a few years, and it was kind of torturous at times, being at tournaments and trying to give everything I can to my team because they deserve that, and also um, be present in my marriage. And I wasn't handling it the best, and there was at times that I felt like I was drowning a bit.
Man, thanks for opening up about this because I think this right here is exactly what I think so many people go through, and I guess you could even say struggle or handle or deal with, because there's something about the sport where a lot of people will have paintball or find paintball before they find their spouse, before they find their family, and it's almost like this brotherhood in a way. I know there's females in it too, but like there's this common bond where if any outside thing tries to destroy that, it's like you chop it off. And
Hmm.
that's almost like a misconception. I think a lot of paintball players say it's like, oh, it's paintball player or paintball or bust. Like if that
Hmm.
spouse isn't part of it, like, well, you can cut her and find somebody else. Um, I think looking back over my past few years too, you and I have a similar journey where when I started this thing 4 years ago now, it was amazing. And then as I continued to go on, like the resentment started to build up, and the more I grew, the more I got success. It was almost like, okay, well, you're going to more events now, you're taking more time away. And it's just same thing. It was that unspoken kind of ruffling, and then it became vocal, and then it just became resentment. And so I know exactly what you went through, and same thing, like I'm on the other side of that now as well. Can you talk me through before we get to how you got to the other side, like talk me through how you handled that? Because I think that's really important for this.
Mm.
So many people that are currently going through like that rough stage. I think it's gonna be important for you to talk about how you went through that before you got through it.
Yeah. Well, I would say, the way I was trying to handle it for a long time was really, I would try to have, the conversations, but I wasn't coming with any solutions at that time, right? Because I didn't have any, right? So I'm having to have these conversations that were, somewhat one-sided of me asking for more support or saying, "Hey, I'm going to this tournament," and not really. And just kind of dealing with it, and those conversations, because they were one-sided, where I didn't have a fix to it because I wasn't willing to really bend. I was like, oh, I stopped playing 10 man for a season, little things, but I'm still gone so much. Um and the, and so those conversations, they weren't very fruitful. And then from there, I was like, all right, well, then I was just kind of like, it was this elephant in the room almost, where she's like, hey, like, I understand you're gonna do this, but I'm not gonna be happy about it, and it is what it is. And we just kind of tried to go through it and just deal with it, and go through the motions of and me kind of do what I felt like the most I could do while I wasn't doing that, and try to set things right to where, if I'm going to be gone, to make sure that things are squared away for the kids, or maybe get a sitter, or just try to do little things. But honestly, like they weren't really they weren't effective. And so I would just go to the tournaments, and I would try my best to try to block it out. But it just was not really possible for me, and me and my wife, we even, at one point we tried, hey, let's just not even talk while you're, at one point it's like, I would try to check in all the time, right? I'm overly checking in. I'm trying to be as present as possible where I was gone.
Because now you're
Um,
nervous.
and that honestly, I think made things a little bit worse. At one point she's like, hey, when you're gone, like, just be gone, do it, and I'll see you when you get back, and we'll be fine.
Yeah.
And that was very difficult for me, because I think that was probably some of the worst of it, to where I just felt completely disconnected from my family. Um, and but and so that didn't work either. So there was a lot of failed attempts, I would say, of not really addressing the problem head on, but more so like kind of tiptoeing around of like, well, this is what the situation is, and neither of us have a solution. So I guess this is life. And I would wouldn't recommend people sit in that moment as long as I did.
Yeah, thanks for going a little bit deeper there, because I think you're in a really unique spot, right? Because a lot of players are going to be going through this, whether they're at a divisional level or a professional level, and maybe even coaches as well. But this is also part of your livelihood. Like, this is income coming in to support your family. So, like, even though it's the fun, paintballs and outlets or release, it's still kind of a job since it's providing too. And so
Mm-hmm.
you're in a really unique spot where you're almost having to defend your job from that. Like, well, I'm also bringing money to the house.
Yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's jump ahead. So, like, now that you're recognize that, hey, things were not going down a good path and it was starting to really affect your marriage, like, what were some of those conversations that you had with your wife to, like, now get to the other side of that?
Um, well, it was through a lot of, things got bad. I mean, they got I would say to the point of the brink of, nearing separation, to be completely, honest here. And it got bad, and I started seeing a therapist, and was more so able to just really start um talking to someone about what was going on in my life, and what was happening. And through a long process, and a lot of other exploratory internal thoughts, and other actions, I started to really understand a bit more um, of where this resentment was coming from, to where I felt like, hey, what do you want me to do? I'm doing everything I can. But I realized it was on me a bit, that honestly is like I could do a lot more. It just, at the end of the day, it's like, if I want to chase my passion, and be able to get that support can't be expected. I think I had kind of a misconception a little bit of, like, once you enter a marriage, that there's a lot of expectations or things that are unconditional, or just like, you should just receive, right? You're my partner, we chose each other, this is what it is. And I really had to understand that I was being selfish in a lot of ways. And when we go deeper, I get more into it, but it's like, I had the ability to do more, and I could show up more, and I could take on more, and I could support her more, to where when I needed the support back, i.e., paintball and travel, then it was no longer, an issue, a form of where she didn't feel that, I was taking without giving. I can show as much support as I can, and more, and then she can feel good about, showing me that same support. So, for a long time, I didn't think I had any answers, and I thought I was doing everything. I had to really take an inward look and realize that there's a lot more I could do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the goal right there, and I think that's where a lot of players struggle, is to look inward, like, look in the mirror and have that hard conversation. Like, wait, maybe I'm the one that's doing too much, or maybe because I'm traveling to all these events, what's the give and take here? Like, what am I not showing up with? You did say something that I want to ask about, because I think this is going to hit with some people too. Is, you said it got so bad to the point where you didn't really have anyone to talk to, so you turned to a therapist, which is incredible. Did anyone on X Factor know about this?
Archie did, but as men, I feel like, and just a lot of times, like, we just internalize so much, and it's hard to go and say, hey, like, this is what's going on with
Yeah.
me. So when I think I probably did not, for well over a year, probably close to 2 years, that until it was at the brink of, hey, this is going real south. I mentioned it to Archie, and I think I mentioned it to Meter, when it was like,
Yeah.
we were in the 11th hour of, like, this is real bad. But other than that, it's like, I didn't feel super comfortable, kind of just like opening myself for that too, especially when I was at this loss, and I didn't really even know what I was looking for. I had the misconception that, um, that I had to choose paintball, um, or my marriage, or choose both, and with the resentment attached, right? I had gotten to the point where I'd spent so much time not really truly, like, I just couldn't find the answer. And so when I didn't have it, I was like, all right, this is just life.
Yeah.
So it just, until I was really starting to get into it, that's where I felt more comfortable, opening up.
Just one more question on that. When you were going through that, like, did you feel really lonely? Because I think a lot of people are going through that when they feel like their world's collapsing, but they're also really afraid to like open up and talk to teammates or anyone else in the paintball industry. It's like a really lonely feeling.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely say that. Yeah, I felt like, very, yeah, like I couldn't, I didn't really want to get into a deep conversation with somebody, or if someone was talking, I didn't want to lie to anybody, right? So if someone would ask me, I didn't want to get in these conversations where, hey, how's it going with you and your wife, or how's this? Like, I wanted to avoid those. I talked to my mom. I'm very close with my parents, and I talk to my mom multiple times a week, and like, I'm going through this stuff, and I don't. And she's a bit of a warrior, and I just didn't even want to. Um, you know, bring that to her doorstep, until, at one point I had to. Um, and so, yeah, it was a lonely, lonely place. It really was. And through therapy and just being able to just talk about it, like, it's so freeing. It really is, of just being able to, it's like a weight on your shoulders of it, just being able to express it. And once I was able to start talking about it out loud, that's when I started to find the solutions. And it wasn't even like, it's kind of crazy, but it's like, I have a great relationship with my therapist, but he's not asking me, like, it's not necessarily like he's giving me advice. He's just asking, poking and prodding little questions here and there, and I'm talking them out. And for some reason, me saying it out loud to someone else is 10 times more effective than me sitting in my car or laying in bed for hours or in the shower, like daydreaming about, my life and how to solve it. Because I had, they say it takes 10,000 hours to get master at someone. I was a master of trying to figure this out ineffectively. I was a very unsuccessful master. I broke those laws because
Yeah.
I'd spent 10,000 hours trying to figure out a solution, and it wasn't coming. I wasn't even scratching the surface.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild because like it's almost the people that are going through this and have gone through it, you're living like almost split personalities where like people
Mhm.
ask you how things are and you're like, oh, it's great because you don't want to open up and share those things, but like it's not. And so you're having to like turn the switch on and off all the time. Um,
Yeah.
and it's the wildest thing is, they say like you hear this from a lot of people that go through therapy, like, oh, just talk about it. Or like when you talk about it, it's so freeing. And the art of talking is so simple. Like we talk
Mhm.
all day, every day, most of us, right? And so like the thought of talking through your thoughts or emotions to somebody or just out loud is like it's so hard. So
Yeah.
it's good that you found that. It's similar to like um writing too. I've got a really close friend who's going through a bunch of stuff and I journal a lot and it helps me kind of same thing for you. Like it gets my thoughts somewhere where they're just not everywhere. And he found the practice of journaling recently and he's like it's been a game changer. He's like I literally journal every day now and it helps put him on a different path. And so I think the theme of that is as long as you're taking some type of step to own what's going on and moving forward, that's the gold in overcoming something like this.
Mhm.
Let's go a little bit back further. And I think when you were before you were the coach of X Factor, I think you obviously had a pretty legit professional playing career too. Talk to me about that. Like, why did you quit and or retire to transition into coaching?
Yeah, I think it's a good point to talk about, just a personal story, because it'll probably, resonate with other people too, because like I played divisionally with X Factor and went pro with the team, and then my career on the team was short lived, and I kind of hung it up, in my opinion, a little bit too early. And what happened was, like, I was in a bad relationship in college, and I was in a long-term relationship with someone, and and it wasn't necessarily like paintball was the issue. The issue is that this individual, like, we were in college, it's a little bit different, but like she was a partier and she had a bit of a drinking problem, and not just your normal college student drinking problem, a little bit to the would black out, frequently, right? And everyone knows that can be very dangerous. Young women in college, anybody blacking out it can be a very dangerous event. And it was happening to where, like, when I would go to practice out of town or I would go to a tournament, like clockwork, I'm having these, what's going on, calls, just constant drama. So I'm going to these tournaments and I'm miserable, because my relationship is like extremely stressful when I'm gone. And it got to the point where, like, paintball is, that's my first love, like since the first time I got shot with a gun when I was 11 years old. I never turned back. There's nothing else I wanted to do other than that. Like, I was obsessed from day one. And I chased my dream. I wanted to go pro, and you can go watch Best Kids in Texas on Amazon Prime or whatever, and get the long form story of this. But like, that's all we wanted to do is chase that dream, and honestly a dream that was a little bit crazy at the time. There wasn't a Texas pro team, and so I achieved this dream, go pro in 2006, and and then just all of a sudden, my dream was just like a little bit torturous. Not to say again, but it's like I go to these tournaments, and more often than not, there'd be a miserable stress going on being gone at these things and what's going to happen while I'm gone. And it became too much at one point where I had to say, what, it made me fall out of love with paintball. I would get anxiety going to tournaments knowing that, like, this was going to take place. And so I stopped playing. And I played, here and there, played a pro event with X Factor in 2009, but for the most part, like, I took a heavy break from the game, and didn't come back, and that's a big regret I held for a very, very long time, of giving up paintball. It's a regret I still have. I've made peace with it at this point, but it took a very long time to make peace with it, like a very long time. I'm talking like years and years into coaching, winning the World Cup, coaching, standing there going, man, I can't believe I gave this up playing. I fucked up, and
Wow.
and so that, I think, was a real reason I was a little blind to my marriage, because like my wife is truly amazing. She really is, and she is truly supportive. But because I kind of had this baggage and trauma, from giving up my playing, I almost, like, any feeling of like encroaching on that, to me, like walls came up, like I couldn't even look inward. I was like, I felt like it was trying to get taken from me again. And
Right.
and that's not fair to my wife. These are two completely different women. One was, not my wife's fault at all. But just, you carry baggage and things in your life, and if you don't address it and you don't fully address it, I never addressed that relationship how I should have until recently. Um, i was kind of, now in this situation where I just felt like I'm not willing to give up paintball. I'm not willing to sacrifice. I can sacrifice some other things, but I can't, um, do that. And that was can't operate in a marriage like that.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I remember, I'll never forget, like, the first time I watched, The Best Kids in Texas. Like, it was on, Netflix or Amazon, whatever it was. And I was like, holy shit, it made it. Like, we've got something on a legit platform. And this was before I knew you or anyone in the pro scene. And I remember watching them like, man, why did this guy, like, he's so young. Like, why did he retire early? And like, and so
Mhm.
just, it's interesting when you hear of other players or other people just in sports in general that retire. There's always like what they tell the public at the time, but then there's oftentimes a lot of like underlying reasons behind that. Uh,
Yeah, and that's like a big reason I'm here today is, and I'm not gonna put names on it, but there's two other guys on that documentary, crucial pieces of that documentary with me, that I think also ended their playing careers early, much later than me, but earlier than they could because they couldn't find the balance in their marriages of the sport. They couldn't find a way to get that support, and they chose giving up paintball. And that's and I think if they, I think there could have been another way for them, if they weren't ready, and whether they were ready or not, they can speak on themselves. But my inkling is I know that they still wanted to play, but they couldn't find a way to balance it. So I've seen this. It's a
Sure.
tale as old of time with paintball is you know paintball and sacrifice, and that's kind of what it is. And so that's kind of why I felt called a little bit to tell my story and kind of where I found a solution in hopes that others might be able to gain something from it. Mm.
Yeah, for sure. And like, as you were explaining your playing career, I just kept thinking like, man, and you touched on like this sounds so similar to what you went through these past few years. But maybe if you didn't step into the coaching scene, you would have never like unlocked that trauma to like ever even face it and now be on the other side of that. So
Yeah.
maybe that would have showed up somewhere else down the road in your marriage too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think it's all these things that we don't address and kind of push back, and they'll come back and show themselves.
Yeah, yeah. I,
Mm.
I want to keep going backwards. Before I do that though, when you hear somebody, a player now say like, "Oh yeah, it's paintball or nothing," or like, do you ever stop them or like have a conversation or like, "Hey, hang on a second, like there's a different option here"?
Yeah, it's like I feel like I will now. It's like I feel like I'm kind of new to this. I kind of it's 2/3 through last year that I felt like started to unlock it for myself. But that's been forever. Heard that. I've heard players. I think the one I've heard the player on our team is said he's told his partner that, hey, paintball was here before you were, and it'll be here long after you're gone if you choose, if you so choose. That's kind of the way he laid it out to her. And I think that's the wrong way to look at things. It just is. But I do understand people, wanting to put their foot down and say, hey, this is my passion.
Sure.
And I'm not willing to give something up. And you don't have to give something up you love. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it doesn't need to be black and white, my way or the highway. This is what's happening. It's okay. If this is what I want, then what do I need to do to, earn that? Is
Yeah.
really what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think the more you're talking about this, the more I'm like processing and like thinking about it. I think it's almost like taking your self ego out of the equation because I think you said it perfectly where you feel like something that you love is being under attack. And I think
Hmm.
just like in war for thousands of centuries, when something becomes under attack, you defend and like try to attack back. And so
Yeah.
it's
I mean,
really,
I like, sorry to cut you off there, but like just pops in my head. But like, just to like, I for years would like give people a hard time of like, oh, you're letting your girl do this. Like I was part of the problem. I was one of the guys that would, bust someone's balls or make fun of me on the back of like, because my wife was extremely supportive until it just became too much for her to bear. Right. So I was extremely fortunate of having someone who was like amazingly supportive of paintball for a very long time. And so I didn't even understand when my friends were going through it with their partners and they weren't getting that same support I was. I was like, oh, looks like you picked the wrong one. That's on you, or you picked the wrong woman. Like I was um, quick to throw that punch, and that was the advice I was given, which is just lost advice. It's just you don't know anyone's situation. You don't know what's going on on either side of the fence. Like either your wife might be supportive and they're just not a piece of shit, or and this doesn't go for everyone. Like I was able to find a solution here with my wife because my wife is amazing. To be frank, there's probably some partners out there that just aren't going to support you, right?
yeah,
And and those people probably do exist. I'm fortunate to not be in that situation, um, but I think you probably owe it to yourself to take it as far as you can, and before you make that decision. But yeah, I think it's that ego. It's I'm doing me. I'm not going to let someone tell me what to do, or um, and I think we probably had other people have had similar experiences to me of having previous relationships that were broken up because of it, and now you're on your next one, and like, oh, I'm not doing that again.
Yeah.
Um, so I know it is a part of the game, but it is because the game is so demanding.
Yeah, and it seems like it's just gotten more demanding now that we have like
Mhm.
layout weekends, and yeah, it's crazy to think how much that professional players, even divisional players now, are traveling. Like
Mhm.
USXBL just expanded to Florida, and so I'm sure you'll have some divisional teams that are now finding ways to play both leagues and maybe play WCs as well. It's like you're literally almost gone the whole entire year, and that's so much burden that it puts on your support system at home.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh, let's go back a little further because this is a topic that Amanda and I talk about all the time, and she is. You want to talk about like your wife, like you're so thankful for her. It's the same way for me and Amanda. Like I would not be the person I am today without her, and she's unlocked so much with me from my childhood with like conditioning and just the way things are when your upbringing is, and it's like you almost look at things as black and white sometimes, and it takes a lot to break out of that. And I think as you go through life from an early childhood, these conditions start to get layered on top of each other, and it gets harder to break out of that. Did you ever like experience any of that, back from a childhood?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is like unlocking this part of it, is kind of what gave me the keys to kind of realize that where what I was doing wrong, and I needed to really understand that conditioning and that programming,
Yeah.
to get past it. And so, just kind of like the way I grew up, was, I had two very loving parents, and my dad was, a rather successful, drilling engineer, like oil and gas, and he spent, a lot of time overseas. And when I mean a lot of time, 200 plus days a year, through big chunks of my childhood. And so, my mom obviously didn't work, and my mom just kind of assumed that role of kind of being, you know, almost a single parent at that time. It's so much. And then my dad would come in and he would do all these amazing stuff and take us on these trips and do everything. He, pour love into us when he was there, but he was gone a lot. Trying to support and give our family all the everything he could, all the support, he knew how to do. And so my mom, it's kind of interesting, but she took on that role, not like, oh, my husband's off working, I don't have to work. Like she took that on like it was the most important job in the world. And I was very fortunate to have a mother that was like super mom. But at the same time, like, uh, it led me to be a little, I got over supported almost, to where she was anything I wanted, she found a way to make it happen. And not necessarily on like a, oh, you're spoiled, you can have all these things, because it really wasn't that way. It was like if I needed to be somewhere, I had an activity, I wanted to go to this camp, I wanted to do this, like she would find a way to make everything happen. She was, just the house was as clean as any house could ever be. I didn't even have it's embarrassing, but like I didn't even have a laundry basket in my room. I would literally throw the clothes over the balcony, and my mom would do laundry every day, and it would be
I did
folded,
the
like,
same.
because she was just super awesome mom.
Yeah.
Um, and so as I got older and got into a relationship myself and became a parent and all these types of things. I mean, this is almost embarrassing to say, but like that was programmed into me of what, traditional parenting roles were. That, my dad would go out, he would make the money, and he would, play with us, and he was love, fun, play dad. And my mom was doing the discipline. My mom was doing all this stuff because she was kind of a single mom for big chunks, right?
Yeah.
And that programmed into me like this is what traditional masculine, feminine parenting roles are. And why this is embarrassing for me to say is that I get in a marriage myself, I have kids, and I go out and I work and do stuff, but it's crazy. But my wife works full time too, right? And she's very good at and very successful, and she is and that's part of who she is. She is a businesswoman, and I love her for it. And but for some reason, my programming led me like not understand of the areas I weren't showing up in my marriage for, because it was almost like these are mom roles, right? Doctor's appointments, um, parent teacher conferences, going on field trips, all sick days, everything, all these things that were just like, oh, of course you'll do that. Like it's insane. I look at it now, like
Yeah.
we're
That
both working
makes
the
sense.
same amount of hours, right?
Yeah.
But my brain was like, yeah, I'm gonna go, you know, I'm gonna work hard, I'm gonna make sure. And while my income was, you know, I pay the bills, but like she's paying for stuff too,
Yeah.
and at the same time, it's like, and yeah, I'm like, I'll do you do the dishes and I do the man jobs. And I had this programming based on my childhood and this understanding, but like that wasn't my reality. That wasn't our reality. And so I'm putting all this stuff on my wife, and feeling like I'm doing everything I should be doing. That I'm playing with the kids. You discipline the kids. Um, it was how I was raised and how I was
Yeah.
programmed. Of this is how it should be, and realizing I was not supporting her in the marriage, and she's having to go to work all day, and then she's having to take off every time there's. And that's why the more kids we had, the more tension and friction it was around paintball, because it's more appointments she's doing and more stress and there's more things falling on her shoulders. And for some reason in my head, I was like, well, as long as I'm paying the mortgage and as long as I'm playing with the kids, as long as I'm, here doing what I'm doing a great job. And paintball is part of my job too. And I really was not looking inward and realizing that I was just um, selfish, like I really was, and just kind of like I thought that was how things should go. That this was equal. I'm doing mine and you're doing yours, and that really was not correct. Yeah.
Man, that thank you so much because that takes so much courage for you to open up and say that. Like I know how embarrassing that can feel like talking about this. And the interesting thing as you were talking about your childhood, your parents were together when you were a kid. My parents separated, but I also had a super mom too. And so even though my parents separated, that as you're explaining this, like it's literally happening in real time for me, that built conditions in me to where for a long time in my relationship with Amanda, I was doing the same things where like I was assuming she was going to take a lot of whatever those burdens were on that my mom took on. And when those things came up, it just became, it wasn't even a thought. It was like, well, yeah, of course you're going to take care of that. Uh,
Yeah.
and so you just put so much extra pressure on your partner without even knowing that you're doing that.
Yeah, and like just to go deeper into like programming, and I think once you understand it and realize that it's easier, because this has nothing to do with my marriage. So we're gonna take a little aside here, but another instance of this is of just how sometimes you can get programmed by your upbringing, but also you can be programmed just by the media you consume and the shows and all these things. And the biggest one where I really got my eyes open to this was, it was like an aha moment to me. But my parents they're currently, they spend their time in between Colorado and Dallas, where I initially grew up. My grandfather's ill there. My parents' friends are in there in Dallas, and then they have a lake house here in Jonestown, right by Texas Paintball, about
Nice.
2 minutes from Texas Paintball. And I had this like picture in my head that when my kids were born, that all of a sudden my my parents would get into this grandparent role, to
Interesting.
where that they would just move to the lake house, or they'd be here all the time, um and they would be just with my kids a lot, and they would and I just had this like expectation, right, that that was just what was going to happen. That's just how life goes. You work, and my dad retired. He's gone back to work, but he retired briefly. And it's like
Yeah.
you retire, and then you're a parent, and then you retire, and then you're a grandparent, and you want to be with your grandkids as much as you can. And that's what I had in my head. And just so happens like that happened through that, and all of a sudden I noticed like my parents, they were amazing around my kids when they were here, and they do an amazing thing for me and my wife every year, for a full week. They take all the kids, and me and my wife get to go on a week-long vacation.
Nice.
And they're amazing grandparents, my kids, but it was way less frequent than what I thought it would be. Where I was like expecting this was going to be this like um, relationship where they'd be around all the time, and they just weren't. And then I think it was starting to eat at me, and I was just like, and I know my mom, she was, and we talk all the time, and she kind of talked about, they at one point they go, well, maybe we'll even sell the lake house, and I was like, what are you talking about? Then you'll be even further away. And it I maybe, I think I brought it up a couple times, and I messaged her, hey, I just really wish you guys were around more. And my mom, she just kind of stopped me in my tracks, and she just kind of put me in my place, and I'm really glad she did, because it opened my eyes. Because I was kind of being like, what the fuck, a little bit like, why aren't you here supporting me and my kids, for my own selfish reasons of like, you can help do parent pickups, and me and my wife can do a date night, those types of
Your
things.
grandkids.
Yeah, it's a lot of selfishness, and my kids can have these great relationships greater with their grandparents that you see in the TV and the movies and whatnot. And so, and my mom said, look, Ryan, she's put in my place. She goes, you have to understand that from the time that you and your brother were kids until you were out of the house, I gave everything to you. It's like your dad was gone. I didn't have friends. I didn't do anything. I poured my entire life into raising you kids and giving you everything that I could. And now that I want to live my life, she's like, we're fine. Me and your dad are finally positioned that like we did not live. Your dad was so focused on work, and I was so focused on raising you boys, that we didn't live. And she's like, and I don't. And she goes, and now we're in our 60s, and we don't have much time left to live. Before we're gonna be too old to go to the hotel we want to go to, or go, climb up all these stairs and see these sights and other stuff. And it really just, I was like, oh shit, like there was so much truth and honesty in her being able to say that to me, rather than go, oh, you're right, I want to be with the kids more, to really kind of. And I was like, wow, and so that was the first aha moment of like, wow, that is very selfish of me to be like, oh, now that I have kids, it's you're up again, get back to super mom. Now you're super grandma, and but then the next one where I sat with it, I started to go, wait a second. I was like, I personally, through divorces of my um, parents, I have six grandparents, or five now. Recently, I lost one unfortunately, um, and so I have a lot of grandparents, but I was not raised in a household where I my parents are dropping me off and staying at the grandparents with frequency, or and I have great relationships with my grandparents, but they're it's not like it wasn't what I had in my head. I'm going, where does this thought process come from that I'm upset with my mom because I don't have this like picture of this grandparent grandchild relationship that I that I had in my head,
Yeah.
but I didn't have that myself. And so then it was like, where
Wow.
did that even come from? And then I'm like, wow, like this is just been programmed into me through watching like movies and all these things growing up and seeing all the the grandparents living in the house and dropping off the kids and all these relations and it's funny, it's like I got that programmed into me that I didn't even play a part in my life. It's like my parents are um more involved with my children than any of my six grandparents were with me in my childhood. But for some reason I was like, where the hell are you guys? And so it's just like it's very interesting how that programming gets in there. And if you're not able to sit back and say, hey, where is this coming from? Where um and a lot of it for me was selfish, and not putting their feelings, in account of what life do they want to live and do they deserve to live. So, sorry to go in that direction, but that was a big aha moment for me of like, wow, like I've I've been a very selfish person and I needed to shed those layers in many aspects, not just in my marriage, but in all my relationships and um realize that I'm not the center of the universe. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, don't apologize because like
Mm,
the work that you just explained is some stuff that people will never tap into in their whole entire life. So like the fact that you're able to see a lot of this and unpack it and like kind of rip off these layers of conditioning and to now live a different life, it's amazing that you're able to get to that spot. And man, you are so spot on with I think a lot of what we consume as a kid or what we are around, it becomes what you think your reality is going to be or what it should be. I think probably for you and I were in similar ages, and I think when we were younger, American Pie came out, and so I think a lot of people our age had this like preconceived notion of like college is going to be what American Pie was
mhm,
for a lot of people. And nowadays it's what you see on Instagram, and it's what you see, when you're scrolling on TikTok. And I recently, like, I fell into the trap a little bit where I've been getting into running a lot lately, and it's literally the simplest thing that you can do, right? Like, you can literally go outside with no shoes on if you wanted to, and just run. But like now that my feed has been really curated for running content, it's like you need this watch, you need these like shoes, you need this certain brace for your knee. Here's this belt to hold all of the stuff. And it's like, wow, like, yeah, I need all this stuff. I'm like, wait a minute. Now I'm spending thousands of dollars to do the most simplest thing because it becomes what your expectation is.
mm,
So it's crazy how what we're consuming just becomes what you think your life is and is going to need to be. And it gets you so far away from what you actually want.
mhm. Yeah.
Crazy.
Okay.
Um, Coming full circle, right? So we went all the way back, coaching, playing pro, childhood, coming all the way forward now. Now that you're kind of on the outside of a lot of this self work and in a successful career, a successful marriage, how do you, with kids too and stepkids, how do you juggle all of it now? Because like now, arguably, you're busier than what you ever have been your whole entire life.
Yeah. Well, so I guess to get into that, it's once I realized that I could be the solution,
Hmm.
I kind of formatted, how I needed to move forward, right, and prioritize things. And one of the main things for me too was like, like it was really understanding of like, okay, if I want this support, I can no longer have this expectation of that it's owed to me or that I deserve it or any of those things. And it's like, all right, I can do more and figure out what my priorities are. Well, my two priorities, my biggest priority is my wife and my family. That is priority one for me. And PayPal, it is, if I'm going to choose my priorities, after that's taken care of, it is number two for me. Right. And then I have other things I enjoy and I love and other areas. But to make these two things, I had to commit and say, all right, if I want to do paintball that I want to, then I need to give everything I can into um, my wife, to my family, to where now it's that support, it's equal, right? It's given that. So
Yeah.
all doctor's appointments and all of those dentist appointments and all those sports things and all those little things, anything I can do when I'm here, I just started doing as much as I could, to the point of like, all right, I'm gonna go and I'm just going to take as much off uh, as I can, and if certain things outside of those two priorities have to get chopped off a little bit, um, that was kind of where I kind of put my effort into and say, we'll see how this shakes out, right? So I started doing all the appointments. It started doing, anything I can. Another one was, I was very fortunate for a period of time to where, I got into the paintball industry a bit, and I was able to make a pretty good income from the business of paintball and coaching paintball. And it was great, to be able to, make a nice living out of something you love. But it wasn't all conducive to, my time. I was doing too much. I was trying to, I'm a partner in a marketing agency. I'm have I have coaching paintball, and then I'm running, or we have project and we're doing that, and that takes up time. Then we started technique, the anodizing business, and that started taking up a lot of time. And I loved it. I actually, after being behind a computer for uh gosh, like 11 or 12 years of just doing marketing, once I was able to like work in paintball, and I was like, oh wow, like I get to work on what, and I was burnt out at the time. Not anymore, but I was, and I needed a break. um, all of a sudden, just being able to get dirty and this anodizing lab and like work with my hands and make art, I fell in love with it. But what it was doing, it was taking me to where our anodizing shop was an hour away from my house, 2 hours a day in traffic. I'm trying to work on this end. I'm getting home. I'm not able to, help. So me and my wife are having to split who's leaving work early to pick up the kids. Um, it's just creating, just I'm exhausted. I'm getting home. I'm not able to, pour everything I want into my kids because I've been working in a garage all day, covered in sweat.
Yeah.
And it was these things of like, I'm trying to earn more money. I'm trying to do all these things because in my head I'm like, well, if we have more money, there's less, you know, um, to worry about, and that's how I'm going to support the family. But it's like more money isn't what my wife needed from me. It just wasn't. What she needed from me was to help with all of these extracurricular things and all these things coming up, and to give her some time and be able to ask her, hey, what do you want to do? How can I support you?
Yeah.
What, and for her it's like, you know finding out, okay, and then, all right, how about you? Why don't you, I'll take the kids today. I'm going to take them. I'm going to go to the park. And there's things that I was like almost fearful of doing as a dad, of like taking my young kids out in public by myself, and having to do all that. And I was always wanting my wife to come with me because we could split the burden, or they're young. If something happens, we're both there. And I wasn't giving her any time to pursue, and even if her pursuing just going shopping for a day, or she's learning to play piano now, there's other things that I've kind of allowed her to go do her own time and her own passion by just doing more myself and saying, I'm just going to do it. I can do more here. I can do more. It's on me. And I did that for a little bit, and I explained to her too. I was like, look, um I want to feel supported in paintball. Like I don't want to feel like, even that, I don't even want it to come from a place of like you're ambivalent to it, or you're okay. Like it this I didn't want it to be transactional, right? I didn't want it to be. I don't think that's super healthy either. Like, well, I'll do this and you let me do that. I don't think that's where the beauty in this is. I think that's better than one-sided, hey, I'm doing this my way or the highway. But I don't think that's where me and my wife really found this place of like, honestly, the best we've ever been in our entire relationship, was it no longer being this transactional thing, but being, hey, I want to support you and I want to do everything I can for you because I want to do it for you because I want you to be happy. I want you your life to be easier because I'm making it easier for you. And in turn, now she's not just being okay with me using paintball, she's supporting me because she wants me to do it and she feels good that that's what's making me happy. So she's supporting me. And now I don't feel like this. Like when I go to tournaments now, I'm not feeling like, oh man, like I know when I come home, because we went through that for a little bit too. Like when we were first trying to work at this, she's like, "Hey, look, I'm not going to be mad when you're gone, and when I get home, it might take me a couple days to you know, level out, but then we'll be fine." But like that didn't feel great. It just didn't. But now it's like to where when I'm doing, you know, I'm not being selfish. I'm giving her everything I can to support her, and she's giving it back to me in a real loving, supportive way. It's like I'm going to the tournaments and like I feel her support. Like I feel that she wants me to be there. She's proud of me, and I don't I'm not worried about what's going on at home or how she feels or when I get home what it's going to be like. I'm I'm at peace when I'm there, and I've learned that like when I'm there and I'm at peace, um, that I'm coaching from a different space, like a more um, elevated space to where like it's like we always talk about being in flow state, as an athlete, but I think in coaches it's very similar.
Yeah.
Um, and for many years, I was having trouble being in that flow state because I had these other ruminating thoughts going on in my head, and I'm, you know, before the game start, I'm looking at my phone to see if what's going on at home, and after the game, I'm looking at my phone, what's going on at home, and now I'm just in this space of like, um, I feel good, home's my wife's got it. She's supporting me to be here, and I'm doing my thing, and it's a really really great feeling to be in, and but where that comes from is just really just true support from both ends. It can't be one-sided.
Yeah, it's wow. So like you're just dropping so much gold in this episode.
Yeah.
It's funny because like you're talking about the result that you truly wanted ended up happening because you prioritize for the right reasons, not this like pro quo or like trade-off of like, well, I'm gonna do
Mhm.
this to get this. It's I'm doing this for the right actual reasons, and then those things naturally end up happening anyways.
Mhm.
Which
Yeah,
again comes back to taking like almost the ego out of it and taking that self out of it.
absolutely, and, like, in some of the sacrifice, it's like, in those seasons, the last year and a half, it's kinda crazy, but, like, we've been we'll get into X Factor, I'm sure, at some point, but since 2019, I think we've lost 8 finals or something like that, a couple of them in overtime at World Cup, like just heartbreakers, double overtime. We've been knocking at the door for so long, and you get in this stage of, and even in me as a coach, like some message I'm telling these players, like, man, we just need to get 1% better. If you can do 1% more, we'll get to the top of this mountain. We can summit this thing if we can just 1%, 1%, 1%. And you just keep asking for another 1% from everybody, and you're doing it yourself. And, that 1% becomes 10% real quick and another 20%. And so I was, as a coach, I was like, all right, what more can I do? What can I do to get us there? What's the next step? And so I started, maybe this is 2 seasons ago, but I live about an hour 45 minutes without traffic from X Factor, from the field. And a lot of the guys, our team, they're flying in, they're staying at Alex's house. Alex has a separate team house for us. And so there's a lot of great culture, for one, of just being with the team after practice, staying the night. And there's also opportunity for meetings, for coaching and stuff like that, to make the team better. So for up until the previous 2 years until this year, um, and that's where a lot of this resentment started to kind of break, right? Become, the straw to break the camel's back, between me and my wife and paintball was, I started, because she understood it. I explained to her, like, hey, I think I need to stay down there with the team. Like I need to, it's what's best. I'm getting paid to do this. Alex is compensating me, fairly well to do a job. And part of the job is on these weekends, I need to be locked in. I need to be 100%. And so I started doing that. Well, yes, the team probably did benefit from me being there as far as from culture, right? And getting to know the players, we have a couple new guys every year,
Yeah,
and
sure.
getting, we're doing more things. We're going to dinners together. We're having, some meetings at Alex's after practice that are valuable. I'm not having to wake up at 5 a.m. to get to practice. So I'm a little bit more fresh, when I get to wake up at 7, and we're right there. So there was some benefits to the team of me being there, but kind of unbeknownst to me a little bit is it did not outweigh the damage I was doing by being gone from my family so much, and the stress that I was creating in my head. To where, yes, I might have been doing some things, but by the time it's layout weekend and I need to be clear headed and learn this layout to be able to um, help my team as much as I can, or by the time I got to the tournament and in these matches, and I need to be as clear headed as possible to be able to make the adjustments I need to make and the right decisions. I was eroding at all of that, right? And so by trying to do more, I was actually taking away from my abilities, in big time. And that's where I was at this, like, this is kind of like, because I knew it, I could feel it. I could feel not being on my game as much, and it wasn't every tournament, but there was some tournaments where it's like, man, I could have done more. I could have been better. And so realizing that, and now being able to draw that line in the sand of like, hey, I drive. I get in my practice schedule now. If it's layout weekend, so we're gonna practice on Friday, and like Thursday, the guys are practicing. I don't go. It's like I'm gonna stay here. I'm gonna take my kids to pick up from school. I'm gonna take them to school in the morning. Friday morning, I show up an hour late. I drive my kids, and it's tough from a coach because it's a mixed messaging of me telling the guys, hey, you got to be here Thursday, and you got to be here at 7 a.m. And I'm saying, no, I take my kids to school on Friday, so my wife doesn't have to be late for work. And I drive into practice, and so I wake and I drive home Friday night. We practice real late on Fridays. Sometimes I get home at 7, 8 p.m. Austin traffic, you know how it is.
Brutal.
Yeah. Wake up at 5 a.m., drive back to San Antonio, practice, drive back to Round Rock, north of Austin. Wake up at 5 a.m., drive back Sunday morning, drive back. And some people are you crazy? Like, why don't you just stay? But I've realized that even the two, and my wife tells me, no, stay. She's because she knows it's crazy, right? She's like, no, just stay. But I know enough now that even if I get home and there's just an hour, right, or an hour and a half until my kids go to bed, if I can go in and kind of relieve and come and play relief there and spend that time with my family, that I'm building that bond to allow me to be clear, right? So, and so I'm sacrificing multiple ways: my own sleep and sanity a little bit on the driving, and then the team. Yeah, I'm there a little bit less, right? But I had to make that decision because at the end of the day, honestly, what's best for me and me being clear headed is what's best for the team. And luckily, we have amazing assistant coach in Dixon Yang, amazing ownership, Alex Martinez. Like, I had to realize that it's not all on me to kind of, this is, if I'm going to coach this team, and this is how I'm going to do it at this point in my life when my kids are the ages they are, and my wife is working the hours she is, chasing her career and her dreams. Like, this is how I have to do it to be my best. And it was a hard, it took a lot of understanding to get there. And then it also is, it's not easy. It's not easy for me to tell Billy Bernaccia, hey, you got 2 kids younger than me, but I expect you to fly in on Thursday for practice.
Halfway across the country.
Halfway across the country, yeah. 3 weekends in a row. It's not easy for me to ask him to do that. It's honestly, it's actually, it's further than that, right? It's not cool. But at the end of the day, you know, that's the decision Billy's making, and because he knows that's what he needs to be able to do, to be the best. And also, when it comes back to, you know, same thing, programming, conditioning, same thing is Billy's retired his wife to be able to do so. He's worked his ass off, for her to be able. He's sacrificed that, so he can chase his paintball dreams, right? So if I want to do all that, then yeah, I would need to retire my wife, you know, and financially, yes, you know, I probably could do that, but um, I don't know if that's necessarily what she wants. She is an ass kicker and very successful in what she does, and at the same time, it's you know, that's a conversation for another day. But
Yeah.
I will say that that is some of the sacrifice. I had to sacrifice some of my effort in paintball and pour it into my family, um, to get to a place where I could be my best.
Man, that's such good advice, and that's so similar to I'm reading a book, I'm like halfway through it from the CEO of BPN, which is a local company here in Austin, a supplement company. Nick Bear wrote a book, and in there they talk about the concept of like grind mentality, right? And like it translates so well into paintball, where if you just grind and grind and grind, like what happens when you grind something? There's nothing left at the end of it. It's just dust.
Hmm.
And so it's almost sounds like by you taking the opposite approach of like, hey, I'm actually going to pull away more and almost do less, that you're showing up even better. And
Yeah,
I think there's even probably science to it where like if you're not around the players at nighttime, the players are going to bond more. They're going to have their own chemistry, which is so important for teams too.
yes, very, very, very true. I mean, that grind analogy is 100% where it's at. You know, it's like I look at, you know, I went into a little bit before, but like I was trying to do too much. I couldn't be there for my family, there for X Factor, there for project, there for technique, there for Kaizen marketing. And at some point I had to say, look, how am I going to do this? And,
5 full-time
you know,
jobs.
yeah. And where that ultimately landed is I had to map out, you know, how I wanted to accomplish my goals is to, and really what I wanted more than anything is I wanted my family to be happy, and I wanted paintball to be part of my life. And I wanted to make this work. And so how I was able to do this was I had to make some hard decisions.
Yeah.
And one of those was like the anodizing, the technique, like I pretty much shut that down. You know, it's like I can't be an hour away from my house and be able to pick up my son from school and be there to pick up my daughter if my wife can't, it has to work late. And so um, so I started, you know, I have the fortunate ability that me and Kyle Berry from Dynasty have a rather successful marketing endeavor, marketing company, we can work remote. So if I poured all the time I had in my paintball businesses, focusing into that business. I'm a confident enough person and very confident in Kyle because he's highly intelligent that we could be very successful, and in doing so we have been, and it allowed me to now I can work from home and I can be there, and less strained and be able to be there for my family. But what I lost in that, what I had to sacrifice, was the anodizing, which is something I very much did enjoy, but
Yeah.
I had to make the decision. It wasn't conducive to what I said earlier were my two main priorities. And then project as well. I mean, I think people have probably noticed that we're producing a little bit less stuff than we have, and some of that is market dictated. But you know, I had to take a pause from being um, just working all the time. That I had to pick my priorities and all right, to support my family. You know, Kaizen is where I'm going to put my business hours in, and put everything else in my family. And in doing those two things, I'm going to enable myself to pursue paintball in the way that I want to. And we're still doing project. We're still going to do project, but it had to. And I think we're going to ramp up soon. But while I was getting things back on the tracks, I kind of had to put a pause on that grind. right?
Yeah.
Because I was grinding myself down, and you get in this kind of hustle winners mentality, and you're seeing success in the things you're doing, and you just want to keep doing more, and you keep chasing, and that's how you want to coach people, and that's how you want to like preach. But I would at the same time um, implore people to look inward and make sure that they are not grinding to the point of burnout
Yeah.
to where they could break something. Because I was doing all those things and really not even recognizing the damage I was doing to my marriage, because I was grinding, I was burnt out, and I was just kind of a little bit oblivious. So, but it feels great. It feels real. I feel great now. So it's definitely, it's just once you figure it out, and I feel very fortunate to have
Yeah.
to be in the position I am now.
Yeah. I think one thing I'd love to ask there, because I hear it a lot in paintball, where if there's somebody that's a business owner, or maybe it's somebody in the media space, or they're working on different projects, like technique, I'm sure somebody's going to listen to this podcast, get to this point and be like, wow, I didn't know technique is either going away, or they're going to think like, how could you do that? And how do you handle that as a person when you say, I'm actually not going to do this anymore? Because I think the reaction from a lot of people is going to be, well, how could you do that? Like, what do you mean? Obviously, they're coming from a selfish place, but that almost puts more pressure on you for making the priorities more harder for you to do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess, and I don't want to speak for Archie because I don't
Sure.
know, and I'm not saying I'll never anodize again. We still have the shop and the setup currently, but at the same time, I haven't been there in 6 months, so I'll tell you that'll tell you what is what. But it is, it's just prioritizing it. People need to, everyone's got their own stuff, what's going on, and uh, I love that people are able to pursue their passions. But maybe this. Some people might disagree with this, and Archie might be one of them, but I don't think you can have everything in life, right? It's like but you can have enough, and you can get what you want, but you also have to there's only so much in your cup that you can pour out, right? And so to me, it's I just needed to find what was important to me, and there's a lot of beauty in that of understanding what's important to you, and being able to set obtainable goals to achieve it, and then seeing the results on the other end. And sometimes you have to give up to get what you want. It's just, I think that's kind of the theme of this whole thing, is that there was things that I had to give up to get, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah, it sounds like through a lot of healthy conversations, helped you reprioritize the pieces in your life. And when you did that, it sounds like things actually became more fruitful for you by the reshuffle.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's I've been lucky, I've been fortunate. I know not everyone is gonna you know, I don't want to sit here and act like, I was struggling, but I will say that, I mean, to be completely honest, when my family is so important to me, my wife and my kids, and um, when it looked broken to the point of no repair, I was fully broken. I was, and luckily that was during the off season last year when it got bad, because I don't think I would have been able to show up. I was, it was too, and sometimes things have to get broken to that point to really you know get to that other side, and to really appreciate it and understand it, and to really fix it rather than just mend it. If
Yeah.
that makes sense. There was no band-aid at one point putting on this thing to make it go.
Yeah.
And so it needed to be completely broken down and reformed. And I would say that, it's kind of a full 180 of kind of how I show up in my marriage now. And I think it maybe needed to get to that point, but at the same time, like, not to, um, it's almost like feeling like, I don't want to come off the wrong way because it's like the feeling of a near death experience. Um, and I can only really say that because I've story for another time, but and some people have probably heard this on a podcast, but I've had a nearish death experience. And so I've had and knowing what that euphoria of feeling is when you get over that of like this new lease on life, um, and can be a bit fleeting if you don't really figure out how to harness that of a new understanding and appreciation. But in this of my marriage almost failing and realizing like um, how scary close I got to that, and feeling like I didn't have the answer to anything, and feeling no matter what I did or no matter what I tried, it just got worse and worse and worse. And now being on that other side of it, and having a solution, and having a new path, it almost feels like I'm in this space of like this new understanding and appreciation for life, for my marriage, and I don't have this fear of because I was living in fear a little bit of like, if what's going to happen, am I going to have to give up paintball? Am I going to have to give up my marriage? And like, this constant like
Sure.
these ruminating thoughts that I had all the time, um, and they're just gone now. And a lot of it is just like I feel now that say something else goes wrong, I realize that the answers, the solutions, like they're in me.
Yeah.
They're not. I don't need to go chase or something to break my way, or any of these things. I just need to believe, figure out what's important to me, prioritize that, and go get it done.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple if you lay it out that way, and adapt and be willing to adapt. And that's I think my biggest fault. One of my many faults that I discussed through here was one of those is I was not willing to adapt. I wasn't willing to give. I was like, this is me. This is what I do. I'm working hard. I'm
Yeah.
paying the bills. I'm not a piece of shit. Like what, and not realizing that by me not willing to bend, not willing to adapt, I was um, just inflexible, and you can't be that way and be successful. You got to be fluid. Yeah.
Gosh, you have done so much life work in the past few years. It's amazing. It's
Yeah.
honestly so amazing to see because, like I said, people will never do as much work that you've done in the span of their whole entire life, or even be aware that they need to do that. And so,
Yeah.
super honorable.
Yeah. It's crazy, once you unlock it. I think before you do, you kind of, and you have to, it's so interesting. Like, I would say, like, if Archie, my relationship wasn't how it is with Archie, and he isn't who he is, there's a good chance that I wouldn't have been able to, I wouldn't have chased it. Wouldn't have looked inward or tried to. I feel like, um, y- I don't know. I was like, oh, therapy, this, that, the other. Like, I kind
Yeah.
of like, I had this. I kind of thumbed my nose at it a little bit. Like, I'm good. Like, I don't need that. I don't. And I had this perspective of certain things, and I wasn't very open minded to um, even one's ability to change. You hear people say, "Oh, people can't change," shit like that, and
Yeah.
I adamantly disagree with that at this stage in life. And but just to be able to be comfortable of going, you know what, like change is good. Being vulnerable is good. Being able to um, really look inward and understand what ego is, and the power of ego, and at the danger of it, and the pitfalls, and all of that. If you're not able to really start to look inward and understand that, like it'll rule you. It really will. Like
Yeah.
it will rule your life. And it was absolutely programming and ego, um, selfishness, um, just expectations, all these things, like that was what was really kind of, I was on that path, they were kind of ruining my life, and being able to break out of that, while it took some work, it's really just the understanding of it. It's really just to be able to look in the mirror and say, you know what, like, I'm not a bad person, but these areas, I'm not I'm not refined, this is where I am, not a good person, and it doesn't make me a bad person, right? But there's a lot of areas where, and I got flaws, we all do, right? But if you're not
Everybody
able
does.
to, yeah, everybody, but if you're not able to face down your flaws, you're not going to grow. That's when people don't change, and when people can't change, when they can't say, you know what, I was a piece of shit, or
Yeah.
hey, maybe, I was, you know, raised in a way um, of having this pride, and I don't know where it came from, what programming, and being proud of my ancestors and my lineage and all the hard work my parents did, and just had this like kind of look at of my accomplishments, and even like, and probably even galvanizing my own accomplishments or gassing myself up more than what they were, right? Of just like have this mindset, and it really just kind of led to like kind of a not fully, you know empathetic, strong, full rounded person. It's just I was just kind of self-centered in certain areas, and being able to break that down and realize where I could improve. And once you realize that, you go, you know what, like, there's a lot of places I can be better. Now I can just continue to grow and continue to get better and better and better. And that goes for life. And like many of things, that goes for paintball, just like it does with life. If you're thinking that you're not making mistakes out there, or you're the best on your team, or someone else, or your fault is because of this, or you didn't get played because of politics, or you didn't, all these little things, and you're not able to point the finger at yourself first, um, you're not going to grow. Right? It's all about, you know point forward. What did it say when you're pointing? Was that, you got three fingers
Yeah.
pointing back, one forward, right? And
Yep.
one up at the sky, maybe. But so it's one of those things. So I think once I really realized to look inward first, it's been a whole new world for me. But I thank people like Archie and people like Oliver before him that were willing to kind of show a different side, and go down a different path of chasing down that ego, and self-centeredness, to kind of open the doors for other of us to walk through them behind them, and
Yeah.
and hopefully that continues to happen, because I think the world will continue to be a better place.
Yeah, totally agree. Um, what do you wish you could go back and tell like a younger Ryan Brand? Like, what advice would you give that person?
I mean, it really is, on that same thing of looking inward and look more at what you can do. I think it's
Sure.
probably, it's in that Best Kids in Texas documentary, but me ending my playing career, there was two sides of it. Yes, that relationship was absolutely eating away at me, and with, and I should have handled that whole situation significantly differently. But um the other side of things was, just to go into briefly, it's like, Texas is a big state. I was, um, the last person on the bus for X Factor, before the team went pro. And so, like, I played the Division 1 season in 2006, came in the team right at the end of, after World Cup in '05, we went pro mid '06. And we had a big roster, and I think I was number like 15, coming on the team. So this is old school X ball, where we did run three lines at one point, but it was, but I had kind of, like I talked about, of that kind of ego, and kind of my shit doesn't stink mentality. And Texas is a big state, and X Factor from South Texas. I was from the Dallas area, and I was kind of one of the guys, you know, at the top of this Dallas area, and you're kind of like, we're competing, and I was just constantly getting nothing but positive reinforcement, and I was, on, the best player on my team, and my players team was successful, and we were playing a division higher than X Factor at the time. And you can watch it all in this documentary, but it's like I went down there, and I had some different choices of where I was going to go pro, and I was really close. Gerald Garcia was my coach, and so I was on a path to go play on Philly with him. Likely, I was traveling and practicing with that team, and I made the decision to go to X Factor. And part of my ego was like, oh, these guys all want me on the team, like they're like, I'm Ryan Brand, like I'm one of the best players in Dallas, like I'm about to be on Philly, I'm doing all these things. And I made the decision, burn that ship, went to X Factor. Me and Grayson, left the team, Smart Parts Factory team we're playing with, like, to go and be on X Factor together. And it wasn't until my first practice that I realized that like I was just somewhat of an afterthought of like, oh, Grayson's coming, because Grayson was from South Austin. He's from Austin, near Dripping Springs area. So he's from that area. They knew him, and they were like, all right, you're number 15, bro. Like, figure it out. And so I had an uphill battle, right? And I felt it was political. And I'm sure from a standpoint, yeah, probably a little bit, right? I'm the new guy. They're winning Division I, winning tournaments, won Division III, established guys, and they have their system. And it's kind of hard to crack into the core of a team. Like we know how this goes. But because of my ego and really because at that point in my paintball career, I had not faced, I was the starting guy everywhere I had been until that moment. And I was young. But I was always the guy, and now I'm all of a sudden the bench guy. It was and I earned a starting role at one point, got injured. Like there's a lot going on in all this, but I felt like I was getting not the fairest look. And I was, and I have a different perspective now, but my perspective at the time was that I wasn't really getting a fair look because I was an outsider. I was one of the last guys there. And it just was the core guys were getting the looks over me, and I was kind of like, there wasn't what I could do. What I would go back to answer your question and tell myself, especially now from coaching and all these other things, is that I needed to look inward. It was about me. What more? Same thing as my marriage. I want support. How am I going to get it? What more can I do to get on the field? Not saying I'm going to show up at the same practices as these guys and I'm going to play just as good as them. And maybe I'm going to have some points, and maybe I'm good enough to be number 8 on the roster instead of, what I eventually became 11, 10, 9 for a little bit, back to 11. Maybe I was, right? But at the same time, I should have looked inward and say, I need to make this undeniable. I don't need to show up as much as them. I need to show up more than them. I don't need to, when drills are over, I need to do my own drills, right? I needed to climb that mountain rather than kind of sulk in I can't believe I didn't get played. I had a great practice, right? I shot all these people. I stayed alive. We go to the event. I only got to play this many points. Why did that guy get to play more than me? I played way better than practice. Questioning this, questioning that. Was never questioning myself. Well, what more could I do? What could I have done to be undeniable? What could I have done to show up more, to get better, to stick with it? Because I've learned this in paintball, and I know this from a coaching standpoint. It doesn't matter if you are out there and you are shooting a bunch of people, staying alive, and you give your team the best chance to win consistently, they're going to get you on the field, right? The coach doesn't like you and you're doing all that, the players will make sure that they get you on the field, right? It's one of these things. And we see it even at the pro level. Like we have this, this drama takes place throughout all the divisions. And I see it with the guys, and I try to empathize with it because I've been there and I've lived it and I handled it the wrong way. But really, they just need to look inward and go being feeling like you don't like, oh, I should have been starting,
Yeah.
right? All that means is you feel like you should have been the fifth guy or the fourth guy. Go do what you got to do to be the best guy. And until you're doing that, like shut up and put your head down, and you'll get there. But or maybe you won't. But at least until you can sit there and say, I did everything I could to accomplish what I wanted to, and I sacrificed everything I could within reason to accomplish what I wanted to. You can't say, it's unjust or political or any of that shit. And so I really wish I had that message for myself because I do believe if I would have done that, I probably would have played much longer.
Yeah, it sounds like that career may have been a few more years with that advice.
Yeah, I might be still playing. I might be a Colt just dragging my old ass out there,
Yeah.
But yeah, luckily for me, just to touch on it, and I guess this goes to the overall theme because this is where some of the resentment came to is, me hanging that up. 10-man came back around like 2018, and I didn't play too much. From the last event I played with X Factor in 09 until 18, 20, like 9 years, and I would have. You could call them dreams/nightmares, but I would have reoccurring dreams of playing, never coaching, dreams of playing, and I'm in the match, and I'm all the time. It was a constant thing, and it was just like, and I was too embarrassed to tell anybody. I never shared this with anyone. And like I would have these dreams of, I'm on the field with the guys, and I'm the one shooting everyone, and I would have crazy like. I'm coaching and like all of a sudden, Ryan, you got to play, and I'm out there and doing all this stuff. And I would have these dreams forever. And it was eating away with me. And I was kind of falling out of love with paintball a little bit. And then 10-man came around, thank you, Tim Montrusser and the others that made that happen. And kind of gave me an ability to get out there and play again, and fall back in love and kind of, get back that regret a little bit and really healed a lot of that for me. And it's funny, like now I play a lot more paintball than I did. I don't think I've had a dream about playing paintball in like 5 years. It's like those dreams were like, and that's why I say they were kind of like nightmares. It was almost like it was like regret and like clouds of regret. And I was like stuck in this space. Over. Yeah. And having to live this out and then wake up and go, oh, like, what did I do? And I was, and so finding 10-man again, it was huge for me. And it gave me the ability to go out there and excel and play and win and win a lot. And it's been great. But yeah, that just meant more time away from my family. And now very different too, because I was no longer getting paid to be gone. This is all very selfish. This is another weekend where I am actually buying my own plane ticket to go to, right? And choosing me over my family for that. But it was just like, did not want to give that up because I yearned for it for so many years. And I knew how therapeutic it was for me to get out there and play again. But there's one of those things. So I think it just meant I had to be able to do that 10-man stuff, because that's priority maybe number 3, right? That I have to show up more and just make sure that I'm giving as much as I'm taking, and giving more when I can and when I'm able to.
Yeah, gosh, great advice. It's it's so funny because like I think I talk about this a lot in this podcast, and it's living with regret and like what that could be like if you don't do those things. And it sounds like that's for you, is what that was playing, is like, oh man, it's all the what if stories you tell yourself. And then just it eats away at you. And for some people, they never get the chance to go back and fulfill that. So I'm glad you were able to kind of bring that back to your life and almost like check some of those boxes that you wish you had.
Yeah, I think we can all look at regret, and you don't have to necessarily live in, it happened, right? Those things happen, but you can also say, what can I do to kind of rid myself of this?
Yeah.
What can I do to, um, and yeah, that's part of life. You make decisions, and sometimes you make decisions that you can't go back and change, but being able to make peace with it, and sometimes that might be something you can just do on your own in your own head, and sometimes there might be some action that you need to work towards to do that. And I thought it was, um, of all the podcasts I've ever listened to, the one you did recently with Thomas was like, that one moment was maybe one of the more powerful things I've ever heard of, when he's talking about Keith, and how he missed his son's first steps, and like anyone as a parent knows, like that's one of the most joyous moments of my life. And Thomas talking about how he had committed and sacrificed everything for paintball because that was his career. That's how he fed his kids for
Yeah.
many, many years, and
Identity.
sacrificing those moments and the regret that you could feel in his voice that he had for that. But now, in his own way, now getting to play with Keith and travel the world with Keith, and getting getting those moments back, and maybe, and obviously, I don't know if, I can't speak for Thomas, right? But I would imagine the memories he's given to create now are more powerful than what he lost, because the bond with his son, I imagine, is extremely strong, and it's very unique to what the decision he made to go play semi-pro with his son and stuff. I commend him for it. I think it's awesome, and it was just really powerful to hear him talk about it. But that's something you could feel the regret in his voice, but also the healing that he's gone through in this stage of life, because he's made the decisions to, I wouldn't say right wrongs, but just to the decisions to set his life at peace. And it was beautiful to hear.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
similar to what you went through, where you almost have to step back and look at your priorities and reprioritize them in a way. And here's now two examples where when you do that, like things start to align more and head more in a right direction.
hmm
It's so
Yeah,
powerful.
definitely. It's one of those things that you see. It's a little woo woo, but you kind of see your life in alignment, and me and other people that are on this path kind of speak on it. But you just kind of, once you get into the right place, like you'll be shocked and surprised of all the little things that other people might consider coincidence, or other things, which it's wild, of what's going on there, and what that means, whether or not this is a simulation or this, that, the other, I don't know. But I will say that I feel very much in alignment right now in life, and it is, not for a lot of hard work, and I do, day in, day out, work to have that alignment, to have that peace. I do, but it's worth it, at the
Yeah.
end. Yeah.
I truly think this is going to be a really special year for X Factor. Whatever it looks like with Archie and whatever he decides to do. But I think where all the pieces are fitting and everything that you've kind of aligned yourself to put yourself in the right mentality. I really strongly feel that X Factor is going to have just a really strong year for performance wise.
Yeah, we are. It's right there. It's there for us. And there's a lot of great competition in the league. But at the end of the day, like it's about us. It just really is. Just taking that one. Everything's trending. In the right direction. The team. I think we finished the season with the fourth, second, third. So very consistent, as far as being there on the podium, more consistent than any other team in that second half of the season.
Yeah.
But we are still, short, of the final goal. And I think everyone on this team would finish 20th first if to do it. We trade we trade the consistency at being at the top for the ultimate payoff. But I think we all know that as long as we're knocking at the door and it's within reach, then we're going to keep chasing it.
Yeah, so it's like it's unlocking a lot of this stuff, a lot of the self stuff to get you over that hump.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan, man, this has
Yeah.
been probably one of my top 3 episodes that I've sat with for a while. You know, this is so therapeutic for me as well, like having people on and, you know, guests share their stories. Like a lot of things that you said also resonate with me and my life and the things that I've gone through or am going through. So I truly can't thank you enough for opening up as much as you did, because this is one of those episodes where I really think a lot of people it's gonna hit home, whether they're leaving it in the comments on YouTube or they're reaching out to you personally. This is gonna be one that's gonna last for a while, I think. So I really,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I mentioned it, but just like if someone wants to reach out or anything, like I was in that place of like complete, like I don't know what to do. I'm just in this like felt like this like it's different than being rock in a hard place. It literally felt like I was smashed under a boulder, and the ocean's tides coming in and I'm about to drown, and to be able to, I don't want anyone to feel like that. And especially if they don't have to, I mean, it's one of those, like, I didn't have to feel that way. I just needed to look inward and if anyone can take some value out of that, that's why I'm here. And if anyone wants to reach out, I'm here for that too.
yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. You know, if this wasn't stressful for you, as you know from listening, this is probably the most stressful part of the conversation now is the last question. This is where everyone always gets antsy. Um, but this is a really good question for you, and you'll of course leave a question for the next guest. But I just had on Danny Schoenhauer from now infamous previous Dynasty, right? And without knowing that you were going to be on and without knowing where we were going with this conversation, like it just fits so well with, like, talk about like a perfect serendipitous moment. His question for you is, if there was one decision that you've made in your life that you could go back and change for whatever reason, whether it be that you knew you had just made the wrong choice or you could have made a choice a little bit differently, had a little bit different of an outcome, what would that be?
This is hilarious. I talked about my life being in alignment right now. And I'm a listener of your show, and of
Yeah.
course, and so I put some thought of like, what question am I going to ask? It
Yeah.
was the same question Danny just
No
asked.
way.
Yeah, but the good news is, I was going to frame mine a little bit more towards paintball, and I'm going to answer this in a paintball sense because I feel like we've been off book on paintball a lot, and I'll give the people what they want. But in me asking was going to ask that question if there was one point. This was going to be my question, so my hot seat will having to come up on the fly in a second. But my question was going to be in paintball. If you could have one point, one decision to get back, what would it have been? Tell me, frame it for me. So, I thought about what my response would be. So I already know, and it is there's a couple of them, but the one that stands out the most is and I'll do it from a coaching standpoint because my coaching career has been much longer than my playing career. Um, World Cup 2021, I believe. We're playing Dynasty in overtime, and two things happened. But Jesse Stevens, so this like I have a time machine, one decision I can do differently. And earlier in that event, Jesse came up to me and he was really excited because Tim Montressor had just gifted him a fruit kit. And we're sponsored by Eclipse, and I'm just like, in my head, I'm just like, why? Like it's nothing against the barrel system or anything, which is like, not only it's not necessary if you know much about paintball barrels, but at the same time, it's like we're just gonna piss off our sponsors. Like, what is the point here, Jesse? But whatever. But I just like we're at World Cup, like I'm in this like mindset of like, well, it's not gonna harm us or whatever. Like, the sponsor is mad, I'm not gonna rain on his parade right now. Tim already gave it to him. I'm just like, let it be. So we get into overtime, and Jesse runs out to the corner in core samples in overtime at World Cup, and shoots somebody off the break. Jesse core samples, and he has a freak kit. And I don't know, maybe they corrected this now with power inserts. I don't know, but at that stage, Eclipse barrel, you get a core sample, take off the tip, you're good to go.
Yeah.
Right? Reverse thread, go win the World Cup.
Yeah.
Free kit, and I did see Jacob Edwards pull this off once, or Jacob. You kind of have to like hold the insert in place because it'll like shoot out and stuff, and just shredding paint everywhere or whatever. So, so basically, how that point went down is that we were up on bodies the whole point. Jesse spent the entire point trying to fix his gun. We were in a 4-on-3 for a long time. And, another, couple calamity of errors took place. But whether or not we would have won that or not, it's up bodies in World Cup. I would have that back, that when Jesse told me he got a free kit from Tim, I would have taken that barrel and thrown it in the trash. And so that is the moment I wish I had back, because I think I would have another World Cup medal behind my ear all the time. Yeah. And I think winning, begets winning a lot in this sport if you look at the history of it. So I would say that there might be more.
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, the whole thing could have been different after that. I wonder if he still has that. Like, I wonder if it's on.
I hope not. I hope that thing has been buried in a cemetery, like, and thrown holy water on it or something.
Yeah.
Honestly, I need to find that barrel. That's probably why we've lost the last 8 finals. I need to find a way and destroy that.
Maybe it's buried in Kissimmee somewhere.
Yeah. Probably it's still in the dirt.
What a great story. Thanks for sharing that. All right, pressure's off. You get to leave, and I'll ask like the next person like the similar question too, in addition to what you're about to ask.
Yeah. Okay, one. So now I have to come up with a question on the fly.
No pressure.
Now it's lots of pressure.
See, this is the first time the whole episode you've squirmed.
I know. I'm like, well, man, I tried to have this. Okay. All right. So I don't want to ask the same question he did. All right. All right. You got a. So we'll lean back into paintball.
Okay.
All right, we asked this question a lot to the guys on the team, so I'll frame it a little bit differently. But you're playing. You get to pick 5 of your teammates to play 5-on-5, and every point that you win, everyone on your team gets $1 million. You're playing against the top Division 2 teams, whoever won the Division 2, maybe the newbies or somebody.
Okay.
All right. We'll say that the Division 2 newbies. We'll just put a team on it to give a thing, and you get to pick. And say this person isn't a pro player. It's them and whatever current 4 other pros they want to play with. So they can take Mouse, Archie, Greenspan. They can do a stack of line, but they're on the line with it. But every time you lose a point, they spin a wheel and one of you dies. How many points would you play, if any?
Gosh, that's a wild question. That's like what is it, the Squid Games version of paintball right there.
Yeah. I will say TJ Danner said he's willing to play more than 10 points if it's 5-on-5.
Yeah, I mean,
you get a new you do get a new teammate every time someone dies. So you don't have to play down bodies. But it could be you or one of your teammates.
It's funny, like you asked them as a coach, because like that could go in so many directions. People are like, I'm just spinning all the time. That's like, wait, what about your teammates? Do you hate all of us?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome team meeting room.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, that's a good question. You know what? I know he's not on X Factor, but I would love to hear what how he answers that question. Because he's such like a statistics, betting guy.
Rainey's told me that one thing he wants to do before he dies is kill a man. So
wow, all right,
yeah, it's in there. Sorry, Randy, I put you on blast. But he did say, he prefer someone deserves it. He says he has threatened and told me it would be me, but he does. He's got to be someone who deserves it. He says. But watch out for Randy. He's sneaking up behind you.
Yeah, he's a sneaky guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. What a good question. Yeah, I'm excited to see how this person answers this. Because you really learn about people when you start to like think about money and all that too, and it's a really powerful thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for doing this. And it's just so fitting because like this episode comes out, really it's Valentine's Day week when this will come out, and just talks so much about relationships and vulnerability. So like the timing of it couldn't have been any better. So it's awesome how the conversation started throughout the year, like, hey, let's get you on. And then the paths just kind of led to this conversation right at this time of the year too.
Wonderful. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Love the show. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah. To everyone else, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Shellda Podcast. We'll catch you next time. See you.